Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we cut through the noise, to give you a comprehensive briefing on the most critical intersections of technology, security, and global law.
Today, we are tackling, I think, one of the biggest contradictions in our digital lives.
Messaging apps.
Yeah.
Specifically, WhatsApp. With 3 billion users, it's basically critical global infrastructure now, isn't it?
It is. But that's the contradiction.
Right, because despite its constant talk about end-to-end encryption, the supposed gold standard, how secure are those billions of private conversations, really?
It's such a vital discussion because the marketing language is so powerful, almost hypnotic. We're always hearing E2E, end-to-end encryption.
Yeah.
So our mission today is really to separate that cryptographic promise from the cybersecurity reality. We're going to look beyond the message content. We're diving into the whole ecosystem.
And that means looking at some, frankly, shocking real-world data leaks.
Exactly. And also tracing the paths of incredibly sophisticated state-level spyware like Pegasus and breaking down the massive conflict between Meta's business model and the world's toughest privacy laws like GDPR and India's DPDPA Act.
And our sources for this deep dive are just formidable. We have academic reports that documented what they called the largest potential data exposure in history.
A flaw that exposed the fundamental identifier of nearly every single user.
We also have detailed court documents that reveal the sheer scale and the chilling economics of targeted surveillance.
And crucially, we have legal analyses. These pinpoint exactly how the app's most basic function sharing your contacts is, well, it's fundamentally violating major privacy laws. That creates this massive systemic legal risk.
So the central tension, the paradox we're exploring, is pretty simple then.
It is. WhatsApp is the most popular, most accessible, and most widely deployed E2E messaging service on the planet. It uses the battle-tested Signal protocol,
Which is the best one out there.
It's considered the gold standard. Yet at the same time, it's been the vector for these catastrophic data failures. It faces record-breaking fines from regulators, and it's the #1 target for some of the world's most aggressive state-sponsored hacking groups.
So we need to understand why the most encrypted app is also, paradoxically, one of the most frequent sources of compromise and privacy scandals.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this immediately. And we have to start with a security failure that is genuinely mind-boggling in its simplicity and catastrophic in its scale.
I think that's the only way to describe it.
We're talking about what's known as an enumeration flaw. An exploit so basic, it exposed the phone numbers of 3.5 billion users.
And that number is so important. 3.5 billion verified numbers, that's nearly every single user on Earth.
So when we talk about enumeration, what are we actually talking about?
We're talking about the danger of a core foundational feature meeting, what can only be described as massive negligence. The core mechanism is WhatsApp's contact discovery. Think about it. When you install the app, you instantly give it permission to read your phone's address book.
Right, everyone does that.
The app then sends those numbers to its servers to check if they're registered users. If a number is registered and the user hasn't proactively set their profile to maximum privacy, WhatsApp instantly returns their profile picture and their account name.
It's all about making it easy to connect with people you know.
It's built for frictionless onboarding, but that's the problem.
So the system is designed to check numbers, but the exploit took that checking process and just scaled it up infinitely.
Infinitely is the right word, exactly. The vulnerability was a complete and utter lack of what's called rate limiting.
Explain that for us. What is rate limiting?
Rate limiting is a basic security 101 control that says this user can only check, say, 100 phone numbers per minute before we block them. It assumes they're trying to scrape data.
And WhatsApp didn't have that.
WhatsApp's system was functionally blind to this kind of automated industrial scale of use. It just let it happen.
Tell us about the mechanism the researchers used. How did they actually achieve this scale?
So this was a team of Austrian researchers at the University of Vienna. They basically built an automated system that systematically generated phone numbers based on national formats, the known format for US mobile numbers or German numbers or Brazilian numbers.
Okay.
And then it just plugged these tens of billions of possibilities one after another into WhatsApp's browser-based web application.
So they used the browser app specifically. Why that one?
The browser-based app was particularly exposed. It was designed for fast, seamless operation, and crucially, its anti-scraping and rate-limiting measures were either, well, poorly implemented or just completely non-existent.
And the speed was just incredible.
The researchers documented they could check roughly 100 million numbers per hour.
100 million an hour.
An hour. They gave a staggering example. It took them only half an hour to capture the first 30 million verified U.S. numbers.
That is just. That velocity is what makes this a historic exposure risk.
Absolutely.
And the data they captured wasn't just the phone number, which is bad enough on its own.
No, it was associated personal data, too. The phone number is the identifier. It's the anchor. But they found that for 57% of those exposed users, their profile photos were also extracted. And for 29%, their custom profile text, the little About section, was leaked.
Now, Meta's defense here was that this information was only leaked if you didn't lock down your privacy settings.
Which is technically true, but that's missing the point. The real scandal is the industrial-scale verification and collation of 3.5 billion verified contacts. It turns a public curiosity into a weaponized list for anyone to use.
The phrase used by the researchers really hit me. They described this as the largest data leak in history had it not been collated as part of a responsibly conducted research study.
Wow.
That's a powerful assessment of Meta's negligence.
It tells you two things. First, the potential value of this database to malicious actors is immense. And second, the depth of the procedural failure by Meta is just profound.
But what truly elevates this from just a simple bug to catastrophic negligence is the timeline. This wasn't a new discovery.
Not at all. And this is the most damning part. A completely separate security researcher had warned Meta about this exact lack of rate limiting, this fundamental enumeration vulnerability, 8 years prior.
Wait, 8 years? So this wasn't some obscure zero-day vulnerability they just missed?
Yeah.
This was a known basic flaw they chose not to address.
Precisely. The earlier researcher provided all the documentation back in 2017, and yet Meta failed to implement a suitable fix until after the University of Vienna team went through the whole process of documenting it again and reporting it through the official bug bounty system.
That's unbelievable.
And even then, the sources indicate it took Meta around 6 months after that second report to finally implement a basic functional rate-limiting measure. It just screams in a prioritization issue, where ease of onboarding and functionality trumped fundamental user security for nearly a decade.
So let's move to the crucial so what implications. When 3.5 billion verified phone numbers are theoretically available, what does that actually mean for the average user?
Well, the immediate commercial consequence is highly efficient targeted attacks. This list is digital gold for scammers.
How so?
They now have a list of confirmed active users on the platform. This makes phishing attempts where they try to steal your login credentials and that's voice phishing exponentially more successful.
Right.
They know they're targeting a real person who is engaged. They can eliminate billions of dead or inactive numbers immediately.
But the risks, as you touched on earlier, go way beyond spam and scams, especially in certain geopolitical contexts.
And this is the most serious consequence, by far. The researchers specifically analyzed the exposed numbers and found millions of them registered in countries where WhatsApp is either officially banned or heavily restricted.
So it's basically forcing users into illegal activity just by communicating privately.
Yes. For instance, they confirmed 2.3 million numbers in China and 1.6 million in Myanmar.
And in authoritarian regimes, just using a foreign encrypted messaging app can be a criminal act.
Exactly. This exposure allows those governments to collect massive verified databases of their citizens who are actively trying to circumvent state surveillance. And we see this translated into real-world human rights risks. The sources cite credible reports of Muslims in China being detained or sent to political re-education just for having WhatsApp installed.
Just for having the app.
Or because their number appeared active on the platform. It indicates contact with the outside world. This simple technical failure provides a massive surveillance dividend to repressive regimes globally.
Now, in light of this global catastrophe, let's look critically at Meta's response. They thank the researchers, sure, but how did they frame this publicly? Did they accept the scale of the failure?
They minimized it aggressively. Their official stance was that the exposed data was nothing more than basic publicly available information.
That's a bold claim.
It is. They kept emphasizing that the photos and text were only exposed if users didn't bother to adjust their privacy settings away from the default. They claimed they had already been working on industry-leading anti-scraping systems.
Okay, but
And they denied finding any evidence that malicious actors had actually abused this specific vector before the research report.
That denial, that claim they had no evidence of prior abuse, seems to completely contradict the fact that the Vienna researchers were able to extract 3.5 billion numbers in the first place.
It absolutely does. The fact that the researchers could pull 100 million numbers an hour is proof that whatever anti-scraping systems Meta claimed to have were utterly ineffective.
So it's more like PR damage control.
It sounds much more like an attempt to manage PR damage than an accurate assessment of the threat. The market for verified global phone number is lucrative. It is highly, highly improbable that nobody had exploited this easily discoverable flaw in the preceding 8 years.
So we've established the fundamental identifier, the phone number, was globally exposed due to systemic negligence. Now we shift to the core claim of security, end-to-end encryption, E2EE. What's so fascinating here is that while 3.5 billion phone numbers were being scraped, Meta was constantly running these campaigns, highlighting the integrity of its E2EE.
Right.
Let's start by defining E2EE in clear, practical terms.
Okay, so E2EE is the promise that your conversation content is accessible only to you, the sender, and the person you're sending it to. Absolutely no one in between.
And the crucial part is that it removes the service provider, WhatsApp, from the loop.
Exactly. They do not possess the keys. This is fundamentally different from normal client-server encryption, where the service provider holds the keys and can, under legal duress or for their own reasons, access your data.
So what makes this promise so resistant to mass surveillance?
The messages are encrypted on your device and can only be decrypted on the recipient's device. Because WhatsApp cannot decrypt the content, they can't comply with blanket government requests for mass message data.
It dramatically reduces the attack surface.
It does. It makes those big hoover-up-everything surveillance operations much, much harder.
And the technology underlying WhatsApp security is highly respected.
Oh, it is. WhatsApp uses the open-source Signal protocol. This protocol is the gold standard. It's favored by cryptographers, journalists, activists, and it provides some deeply secure features. It combines things like the double ratchet algorithm, pre-keys, and a triple elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman handshake.
Okay, that's dense. But what's the key takeaway from all that for the listener?
The key takeaway is that these components all work together to ensure something called forward secrecy.
Let's break that down. What does forward secrecy mean in practice?
Forward secrecy is crucial. It means that if an attacker manages to compromise your device and steal your current cryptographic keys today,
they still cannot go back and decrypt any messages you sent yesterday. The keys are constantly changing like a ratchet mechanism. So your older communications are protected, even if your future keys get exposed.
it prevents an attacker from building a permanent, retroactively accessible archive of your communications.
Which is a key goal of state surveillance.
And given that WhatsApp uses this incredibly sound protocol, its reach is just massive.
Absolutely. By May 2025, it was confirmed as the most widely used E2E service globally, reaching over 3 billion users. Now, Signal, the nonprofit app, is often cited as the pure implementation because it collects far less metadata.
Right.
But WhatsApp's sheer adoption means that the security advantages of E2E are applied to roughly a third of the global population. And that is a massive public good.
However, the sources consistently remind us that E2E is not some magic shield. It has inherent limitations, and the primary one seems to be the endpoint problem.
Yes. This is the single biggest conceptual weakness in E2EE. The encryption only protects the data in transit.
So while it's flying through the internet, exactly. Once the message reaches the recipient's phone and is decrypted, that is the endpoint, the data exists as plain text again. At that point, it's vulnerable to anything that compromises the device itself. Malware, screen scraping software, operating system exploits, or even just someone physically taking the device.
So E2EE doesn't protect data at rest on the device, only data flowing between devices.
Precisely.
And what about the classic cryptographic risk, a man-in-the-middle attack where someone tries to insert themselves into the key exchange?
MITM attacks are a constant threat. The attacker tries to impersonate the person you're talking to during that initial secure key exchange.
So my phone thinks it's talking to my friend, but it's really talking to the attacker.
Right. It encrypts the message with a key belonging to the attacker, who can then read it, re-encrypt it, and send it on to the real recipient.
So how do you stop that?
To counter this, E2E protocols include mandatory authentication methods. For you, the listener, this is that part where the app prompts you to compare a fingerprint, a unique string of numbers, or scan a QR code with the recipient.
Right, the security code verification.
Yes. If those fingerprints match, the key exchange is verified and the man-in-the-middle threat is neutralized.
Shifting to a more political dimension, the final major limitation is the elephant in the room, the backdoor controversy.
This is the constant battleground. Governments, the UK with its online safety bill, Australia, India, they all argue that E2E is a haven for terrorists and criminals.
Oh, so they demand access.
They request or mandate exceptional access mechanisms or backdoors to get to the encrypted content. But the universal security consensus is that you cannot build a backdoor that can be selectively controlled.
Meaning if you build it for the good guys.
The bad guys will find it and exploit it. A vulnerability is a vulnerability. It would break the security promise for every single user. It's a binary choice. Either E2E is secure for everyone or it's secure for no one.
And this isn't just hypothetical. We have a history here.
Not at all. We have clear historical precedents. Think back to Skype. Microsoft initially claimed some E2E features, but it was later revealed they had a functional backdoor. It allowed them to hand over users' decrypted messages directly to the NSA on request. It just shows that the trust you place in a closed-source provider's E2EE claim must always be heavily scrutinized.
Let's circle back to the technical side, specifically to the findings from the University of Vienna researchers, the ones who exposed the 3.5 billion accounts. They found a surprising security failure within the encryption key usage itself.
Yes, this observation is highly technical, but it's deeply important for network integrity. While they were analyzing that massive database of accounts, they observed a surprising number of accounts that were using duplicate cryptographic keys.
And that's bad.
It's fundamentally against the principles of secure communication. Every device should have its own unique private key pair.
What are the implications if cryptographic keys are duplicated?
It creates a massive codependency risk. If, say, 10 users share the same key, and that key gets compromised from just one of those users' phones.
Then that single key could decrypt messages for all 10 of them.
Exactly. It dramatically expands the blast radius of any individual device compromise.
Did the researchers suggest this was a flaw in WhatsApp's core system, or was it something else?
They speculated, and this is the vital nuance, that the key duplication was highly likely the result of unauthorized third-party WhatsApp clients.
Rogue apps.
Road apps, probably used by large-scale scammer operations or maybe even surveillance groups. They documented one extreme case of 20 U.S. phone numbers, all using a cryptographic key of all zeros.
Which is functionally no key at all.
It's completely insecure. So these rogue, broken endpoints introduced by non-official clients, they pollute the entire network, even if the official signal protocol implemented by WhatsApp is sound. It's a network integrity problem caused by malicious users.
Here's where the discussion turns to the sophisticated high-stakes game of targeted espionage. If the content is encrypted, how are high-value targets, journalists, activists, dissidents, still getting compromised?
The answer, as we touched on, is by bypassing E2E entirely and targeting the device itself.
The endpoint.
This brings us to the NSO Group and their infamous Pegasus spyware. It is the perfect illustration of the endpoint problem. Their goal isn't to break the math of the signal protocol. That's too hard, too costly. Their goal is to compromise the phone before encryption happens, or after decryption happens.
So walk us through the mechanics and the sheer scale of the Pegasus attacks. This all came out in the court documents from WhatsApp's lawsuit against NSO Group in 2019, right?
Right. And that 2019 campaign was devastating. During just a 2-month window, April to May 2019, Pegasus targeted an estimated 123 WhatsApp users across 51 different countries.
And the exploit itself was terrifying because it was zero-click.
It used a buffer overflow vulnerability found in WhatsApp's VoIP, its voice calling stack.
Yeah, zero-click buffer overflow. That sounds like something out of a spy movie. Explain what that means in practical terms.
It means the attacker could remotely infect the target's phone without the victim having to do anything. No clicking a link, no opening a file, not even answering a call.
So how does it work?
A buffer is like a temporary storage location in the app's memory. The attacker sends a carefully crafted packet of data that deliberately exceeds the buffer's capacity. When the app tries to process it, the data overflows, and that allows the attacker to inject their own malicious code Pegasus into the running process of the phone.
And this all happens silently, remotely.
And critically, before the message content is even decrypted or fully processed.
And who were the victims of this industrial-scale surveillance?
The list is a clear indicator of the geopolitical motives behind NSO Group's clients. We're talking human rights activists, journalists investigating corruption, political opposition figures, civil society members.
And the court document gave a country-by-country breakdown.
A chilling one. Mexico was hit hardest with 456 victims, then India with 100, Bahrain with 82, Morocco with 69, Pakistan with 58. And it wasn't just developing nations. They found 12 victims in Spain and confirmed cases in the UK and even the US.
The economics of this are just staggering, based on the revenue figures and the sources.
They absolutely show the high stakes and the vast funding behind these operations. The specific hacking tool that leveraged this WhatsApp vulnerability was priced at up to $6.8 million for a one-year license.
$6.8 million.
That kind of pricing is tailored for state intelligence agencies or specialized law enforcement bodies who need persistent, untraceable access to high-value targets. The documents revealed that the specific tool netted NSO Group at least $31 million in revenue in 2019.
And these attacks aren't just historical, it's a recurring, evolving threat.
It is the model for modern digital espionage. Similar campaigns continued right into 2024. We saw reports of Paragon Solutions deploying spyware against 90 journalists using a zero-click vulnerability, and Predator Files using malicious video files to exfiltrate gigabytes of personal data. The cat-and-mouse game is continuous, and it consistently targets the weakest link, the user's phone.
Okay, so we have device compromise. Now let's talk about a much more mundane, user-created gap in the security chain that completely undoes E2E.
The unencrypted cloud backup.
Right.
This is perhaps the most common reason why law enforcement, when targeting a suspect, often bypasses the need to break E2E entirely.
Oh, so?
By default, when you install WhatsApp on an Android device, your conversation history is backed up unencrypted to Google Drive. On an iPhone, it backs up unencrypted to iCloud.
So why does this automatically defeat the whole security premise of E2E?
Because the entire archive of your supposedly secure conversations is suddenly existing in plain text on a server owned by Google or Apple.
And those companies can be compelled to hand it over.
Exactly. Unlike WhatsApp, which holds no keys, Google and Apple are compelled to comply with legal warrants from law enforcement globally. Once that data is in the cloud, it's accessible to them or to any hacker who manages to breach the cloud account itself. It just completely undermines the E2E promise.
The knowledge that your entire archive is sitting there, plain text, available via a warrant, should be enough to prompt a security warning every single time.
It should, but the default setting is always convenience over security. Now, WhatsApp did introduce optional end-to-end encrypted backups in late 2021.
But no one uses it.
The sources indicate the uptake is very low. Why? Because the setting is often buried deep within app menus. Users prioritize frictionless recovery of their chat history over the process of setting and storing a secure key for their backup. The path of least resistance is the path of least security.
Okay, next, let's explore a hidden data leak that shows how metadata can leak even when E2E is active. Push notification services, or PNS. This is fascinating.
This is a remarkable finding from academic research because it exposes a contradiction in how secure apps function in the broader mobile ecosystem.
Okay.
To notify you instantly that a message has arrived, secure apps have to rely on third-party push notification services like Google's Firebase Cloud Messaging or Apple's PNS.
And these services operate outside the secure E2E channel.
Essentially, yes. And researchers demonstrated this necessity creates a dangerous leak vector. They found evidence that secure messaging apps leak sensitive data, metadata, and sometimes even content to Google's FCM during this process.
What specific types of sensitive data were leaked to Google through this channel?
The researchers confirmed 5 types of data being leaked: basic device and user IDs, the sender's name, the sender's phone number, and most alarmingly, the message contents themselves.
Wait, I have to stop you there. Message contents. How can an app that claims to be end-to-end encrypted leak the actual content of the message through the notification service?
This is the critical failure point. The study found 4 different apps with over 1 billion cumulative installs leaking message contents via FCM, despite their explicit claims of E2EE or superior privacy.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The app Just Talk, for example, explicitly promised users that all the personal data is never shared with any third party. Yet researchers clearly observed the full content of test messages being transmitted to Google servers to deliver push notifications.
So why does this happen?
It happens because developers, for simplicity or functionality, often package the message payload directly into the push notification. This allows for a quick preview on your lock screen. But if that payload isn't properly stripped of content before it's sent to the PNS, it leaks.
And this information is then directly accessible to law enforcement, completely bypassing the app's encryption.
Precisely. Once law enforcement gets the relevant push tokens from the app publisher, they can legally request that Google provide all information linked to that token. And that can include the full message content and metadata from the push notifications.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, the long-term challenge for Meta's WhatsApp isn't just patching technical flaws. It's the fundamental incompatibility of their business model, which relies on metadata collection with modern privacy laws.
That is the core conflict. That's surveillance capitalism. WhatsApp collects vast amounts of metadata. We're talking sender and receiver phone numbers, precise timestamps, device IDs, IP addresses, location data, communication frequency.
So even if they can't read your messages, they know everything else about you.
They can use this metadata to construct incredibly detailed profiles of your social graph, your daily habits, your political affiliations, all for surveillance or, more likely, highly targeted advertising.
This tension just exploded during the 2021 controversial policy update. That was a massive moment of friction.
It was a global privacy crisis. The update was designed to force users to accept wider sharing of business chat data and critical metadata with Facebook to better integrate WhatsApp into Meta's broader ad infrastructure.
And the reaction was immediate.
It was. Users saw it as a privacy betrayal. There was a massive, visible migration wave to Signal and Telegram. WhatsApp's App Store ratings plummeted globally because of the public outcry.
And this data sharing practice brought swift regulatory action, especially in Europe, under GDPR.
The Irish Data Protection Commission, the DPC, is the lead supervisor for Meta in Europe. They imposed a staggering fine of $225 million in 2021.
And that wasn't for a data leak.
No, it was for failing to be transparent about data processing, particularly how and why data was shared across Facebook companies. The DPC found that WhatsApp failed to meet GDPR standards for clarity and for granularity of consent. The user basically didn't know what they were consenting to.
Let's delve into the specific legal analysis, because the sources highlight two ways WhatsApp's contact sharing seems to directly violate core parts of the GDPR.
Right. The first, and arguably the most egregious violation, is the non-user problem.
Okay, what's that?
It's simple. When you upload your address book, WhatsApp extracts and processes the personal data name, mobile number of contacts who are not users of WhatsApp. These people have no relationship with Meta.
So it's data processing without any legal basis. What basis would WhatsApp even claim?
Their typical defense is legitimate interest under GDPR. They argue they need to process this data to help you quickly get in touch with your friends.
But regulators don't buy that.
No. The DPC argued that Meta's interest in expanding its user base by processing a non-user's phone number is fundamentally overridden by the non-user's right to privacy, especially since the non-user gets zero benefit. Since there's no consent, no contract, no legal obligation, the processing becomes unlawful. It's a massive systemic violation repeated billions of times.
And the second violation focuses on the user-to-user leak, which is far more subtle.
This is a fascinating legal point. Imagine you're a WhatsApp user, and you're talking to a client who's also a user. In your phone's contact profile for that client, you've stored personal data they never intended to share with WhatsApp, maybe their home address or their company name.
Okay.
When you upload your contacts, WhatsApp processes and potentially displays that specific information within the app.
So even though my client is a user, their home address is being processed based on my consent, not theirs.
Exactly. The processing happens under the blanket consent you gave. This contravenes GDPR, which requires consent to be free, specific, informed, and unambiguous. The client did not give specific consent for their home address data you typed into your phone to be processed by WhatsApp. It shows a profound failure to isolate data processing to only the bare minimum needed.
This legal vulnerability is a huge systemic risk. Now, moving across the world, how does this clash play out with India, a massive market with its new Digital Personal Data Protection Act?
India is arguably the most important market for WhatsApp. The DPDP Act is designed to be as stringent or even more so than GDPR, and WhatsApp is only partially compliant.
The central problem is still that forced consent model.
Yes. Section 6.1 of the DPDP Act fundamentally requires granular consent. Users have to be able to opt in or opt out of different specific processing operations, not just one blanket accept all button. WhatsApp's all-or-nothing approach directly violates this. It mandates a complete overhaul of how they manage user preferences in India.
And beyond consent, what are the other major compliance gaps?
They fall short on implementing key user rights, like the right to data portability and the right to correction. For instance, sources indicate users can't easily export their full chat history in a portable format. They can do individual chats, but not the whole account.
Which is required by the Act.
Right. Furthermore, you have limited ability to edit certain profile info directly in the app. You have to go through the parent Meta account, which is also seen as a compliance failure.
And the final crucial gap, breach notification.
Yes. DPDP Section 17 requires that India's Data Protection Board and all affected users be notified individually within 72 hours of a breach. WhatsApp's current method relies on Meta's aggregated, often vague, quarterly transparency reports. That lack of rapid targeted communication is a significant compliance gap.
This raises an important question. Despite all these systemic leaks, technical vulnerabilities, and legal scrutiny around metadata, why do governments still focus their heaviest fire on E2EE, the one thing WhatsApp seems to do correctly?
Because governments operate under the pressure of criminal investigations and national security threats. They argue that E2EE is an intolerable impediment, and they cite specific high-profile tragedies as triggers.
Like what?
The 2017 Manchester Arena bombing in the UK, the spread of misinformation leading to mob violence in India and Brazil, and evidence related to the January 6 Capitol riots in the US. They push the narrative that encrypted content prevents them from stopping major crimes.
So how has WhatsApp managed to resist creating backdoors despite all this immense pressure?
WhatsApp has maintained a remarkably consistent, principled resistance. They argue, and the cryptographic community strongly supports them, that breaking E2E for one government compromises the security of all 3 billion users globally.
Creating a massive target for cyber criminals and authoritarian regimes.
Exactly. They frame it as a global security choice, not just a national compliance issue.
So their strategy shifts from protecting the content to cooperating intensely on the periphery. The metadata.
Absolutely. Their compliance efforts focus squarely on metadata disclosure. They provide account registration data, device IDs, and critical timestamps of communication under strict legal oversight, of course.
And the scale of this cooperation is immense.
It is. In just the first half of 2022, Meta got over 55,000 requests for user data from India alone, and they complied with over 66% of them. They provided metadata, but steadfastly refused to provide message content.
So their defense is basically, you can't have the content, but we can give you everything leading up to it.
That is the trade-off. It maintains the integrity of the encryption while cooperating on the surveillance component their business model requires. And this links back neatly to that technical issue of duplicated cryptographic keys we discussed.
Right. The finding from the Vienna researchers. How does that factor in here?
It creates a vulnerability that governments and hackers might exploit without demanding a formal backdoor from Meta. If the researchers are correct and the key duplication stems from unauthorized, compromised clients.
Perhaps used by state actors themselves.
It's possible. It means the network is only as secure as its weakest point. A foreign intelligence agency doesn't need Meta to break E2E. They just might need to deploy a broken proprietary client that undermines the key generation process for the targets they're communicating with. It's an internal compromise rather than an external one.
Okay. For the learner trying to navigate this incredibly complex and often contradictory landscape, we need a simple, holistic comparison. How do the big three, WhatsApp, Signal, and Telegram, stack up when we compare their total security posture?
This comparison is essential because it highlights the fundamental trade-offs users make between convenience, platform size, and absolute security. The total posture involves 3 things: E2E status, data collection, and transparency.
Let's start with Signal, the champion of security.
Signal is consistently the gold standard. E2E is mandatory by default for everything. Its data collection is minimal, just your phone number, account creation date, and last connection. Critically, it does not collect metadata about who you communicate with.
And it's open source.
Both its client and server code are open source, and it's run by a nonprofit foundation, so there's no profit motive to collect your data.
Next, WhatsApp, the ubiquitous contradiction we spent this deep dive analyzing.
WhatsApp provides E2EE by default for all content, a major strength. It uses the same Great Signal protocol. However, its security is severely compromised by its high data collection. Phone numbers, contacts, device IDs, usage data, location, all of it can be shared with Meta for advertising.
And it's not fully transparent.
The encryption protocol is open source, but the server-side code and overall infrastructure are closed source. You can't independently scrutinize the metadata harvesting.
Finally, Telegram, the platform of convenience and massive community groups.
Telegram represents a significant security trade-off. E2EE is not the default. It's an optional feature only for one-to-one secret chats. All standard chats and groups are only client-server encrypted.
Meaning Telegram holds the keys and can access the content.
Correct. It also uses its own proprietary MT-Proto protocol, which has faced less public scrutiny. The client apps are open source, but the server-side code where regular chats live is closed source. It's great for broadcasting and large communities, but completely unsuitable for high-risk, private communication.
So, to synthesize everything we've covered,
While E2E is mathematically robust and protects the words you type, user privacy ultimately hinges on minimizing metadata, rigorously ensuring endpoint security against threats like Pegasus, and forcing platforms to adhere to granular consent requirements against a business model driven by surveillance capitalism. The cryptographic pipe might be sound, but everything around it, from the contact list to the push notifications, is leaking data.
to summarize the key takeaways for you, the learner. First, the enumeration flaw proved phone numbers are not secure identifiers. Simple negligence exposed the contacts of 3.5 billion users globally, creating massive risks.
Second, E2EE only protects data in transit. Sophisticated spyware like Pegasus bypasses encryption entirely by compromising the device itself.
And finally, the real systemic privacy threat from Meta's WhatsApp is the extensive, profitable collection of metadata and its subsequent legal use in contexts far removed from your encrypted chat, forcing this massive clash with global laws like GDPR and DPDP.
The discussion around platform security so often focuses on the political demand for government backdoors. But our sources clearly demonstrate that the user's biggest vulnerability might not be some hidden key reserved for the state.
Right.
It might be the simple default settings and infrastructure choices made by the platform itself, whether it's the lack of rate limiting that exposed billions of numbers, the default for unencrypted cloud backups, or the sloppy implementation of push notifications. These simple failures make billions of pieces of data vulnerable to anyone, criminal or state actor, with enough resources and malicious intent.
And a final provocative thought.
For further exploration, we'd suggest researching the ongoing development of secure identifier systems that propose replacing insecure phone numbers with bona fide secure cryptographic identifiers for account registration. It's a potential solution to the massive enumeration risk we face today.